Welcome to the No Love Podcast, where we decrease tomorrow's divorce rate today by teaching singles and couples alike how to experience love on purpose and not by chance. I am your host, Edward L. Fairley, accompanied by my wonderful co-host, Michelle Larkin. Michelle, say hi to the people.
Hi, world.
All right, so we are typically here on Thursdays. Thursdays for the last 2 weeks just did not work for us, and it seems apparent that for some reason, some energy, some force, I prefer to call the enemy, does not want this topic to be discussed. And this week, we just decided, you know what? It's working right now. So we are going to go live right now. We're going to record this. Whoever is here, we can discuss live, but we are going to record this conversation and we are going to get it out to the masses because it is the root of so many things or issues that we go through from a relational standpoint, romantic relational standpoint, as well as our just self-love standpoint. So the topic of today is, now that I realize that I have a low self-esteem, how do I reverse it? And I'm going to dive in because this is such a serious topic, and I think we can go on and on and on, and I'm pretty confident that this won't be the only show that we'll do about it. But to start it off, I'm going to just name some signs of low self-esteem, because sometimes we have people that listen or we hear something, we're like, oh, that was a great message for such and such, or that was a great message for such and such, and they never see themselves in it. So I want to kind of give some ideas or some signs of you having a low self-esteem to see if you might fall into the category of the topic in which we are discussing today, which a lot of people tend to do. So one is you try to build your inner confidence by fishing for outer compliments. I'm gonna say that again. You try to build your inner confidence by fishing for outer compliments. Another one is you tend to end up and stay in relationships with people who talk down to you and have nothing of mental, and have nothing of mental, emotional, nor monetary value to offer you or the relationship because you hate being alone. I'm going to say that one again. You tend to end up and stay in relationships with people who talk down to you and have nothing of mental, emotional, nor monetary value to offer you or a relationship because you hate being alone. Another one, you buy people things as a means of keeping people around or trying to get them to like or love you. Another one, you give up sex as a means of keeping people around or trying to get them to like or love you. Another one, you spend a lot of time and money on your outer appearance to compensate for what you lack in your inner appearance. Another one, if someone gives you a compliment, they can have pretty much anything that they ask of you. Another one, you compare yourself to others and make your life decisions based on what you think others might think of you. Another, you believe people when they say something negative about you, but not if they say something nice about you. Another one, you don't feel loved unless you are being disrespected and or physically and mentally attacked. Last one that I'm going to use is you only feel affirmed if you are in a romantic relationship with someone or seek affirmation from others by asking them for their opinions of your actions, which is really your way of seeking their approval of your actions. Since that was so long, I'll read it again. You only feel affirmed if you are in a romantic relationship with someone or seek affirmation from others by asking them for their opinions of your actions, which is really your way of seeking their approval of your actions. So these are ways that you can identify with whether you have a low self-esteem or not. So again, I shared different examples of what it looks like to have low self-esteem. because I wanted people to kind of indirectly look at themselves and see, well, do I do this? Do I have moments when I actually exercise these signs, so to speak, so that we can kind of see ourselves in this, so that as we go through the journey of how to reverse it, we will start thinking about ourselves when doing so. So I'm going to be upfront on this particular show. I'm going to be very, very as transparent as I can be in sharing my process of reversing this, so that you all, when you're listening to this, can see how the process looks, so that you can actually get yourself out of it. Because this is a very, 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 very tough process. And again, I'm going to share. There's no pressure for you to share, Michelle, but I'm going to share how this process looked for me. And if you want to share, that's perfectly fine. What I'm going to use as a guide to go through the process is a piece that I published and shared called The 4-Step Cure for Low Self-Esteem. So I'll reference it and then I'll step from it and I'll share what my process looked like. Okay. So again, long show, serious topic. So let's go ahead and dive in. So in the 4-Step Cure for Low Self-Esteem, it reads that step 1 is begin a relationship with you to gain self-awareness. Basically dating yourself or being in a relationship with yourself. And what it reads is, it says, this process consists of you asking a lot of why questions about yourself until you get to the root of the reason why you asked why in the first place. You have to study you, become a student of self. You should be able to articulate why certain things trigger your anger, happiness, excitement, frustration, humor, and other feelings. Most people aren't able to communicate why they feel the way they feel because they have no relationship with themselves. Believe it or not, it's not uncommon for people not to know themselves, let alone, have ever encountered their true selves before. People are and have been who their parents have told them to be, who their friends are, and who television, the media, their exes, past experiences, or society has molded them to be their whole lives. So, to solve your self-esteem problem, you must first solve your identity problem. This is why you must first begin a relationship with yourself. The relationship with you process is a tough process because the investigations of why can cause you to remember and confront experiences that you've buried on purpose. Though this process is tough, it's necessary to get to the next phase of curing your low self-esteem. So this is what my process looked like for this. So I identified the fact that I had a low self-esteem through beginning a relationship with myself. I realized that, like the list that I brought up, that I had a low self-esteem. And the whys that I asked myself to find out, where in the world did this low self-esteem come from? Good evening, Mr. Henry. Good to see you. The actual results, or what popped up from the whys. What caused me to have low self-esteem? Well, one, when I was 4 years old, I was abused by my babysitter. And she would always just beat me for no reason. And every time I went to this woman's house, I would try to just sleep through the whole day in hopes that I could sleep when my mom would drop me off, and then just get off to avoid the abuse that I was enduring from this woman. And naturally, if you're sleeping for a long period of time, your eyes just pop open. And she watched me like a hawk. So as soon as my eyes would pop open, I would close them really quickly, and she would say, "Get up, I saw you." And then the day would begin. And this process of physical abuse, where she would beat me for no reason, hit me for no reason, it escalated so much so that I ended up with my corduroy pants melted to the back of my legs, of both of my legs. She made me stand in front of this fiery furnace. And she said if I would move, that she would beat me. And I was so terrified of her beating me that I stood there until my corduroy pants melted to the backs of my legs. These pants had to eventually be ripped off, skin scraped, third-degree burns. I had to wear medicated tape to and from school. And my mom listened to the story that she shared, that I had wet my pants and that she didn't mean any harm, and they had to be dried. So that was probably the contributor to my, and I'm looking at Michelle's face like, what kind of mom? So we're going to get to that part. What kind of mom receives that story, right? and that's fine. So that was one of the contributors to my low self-esteem. Then from there, my mom, in her respective relationships with other males, she always put them first. Over me and my sisters, she put them first. She always catered to them, and we were not considered in her decision making. So much so that we ended up in Haiti, and in Haiti, I was abused there as well. The way that I was taught to learn Creole, which is broken down French, was anytime that we got caught, me and my sister, anytime we got caught speaking English, we got whipped, we got beat, as a practice to teach us to learn the language that we should have learned while we were in Haiti. And we lived there for a year. So first few months of that didn't go so well, which landed us in a garage, and we lived for the duration at that location until we finally left Haiti. Then again, my mom, as I stated earlier, she still went through the phase of making decisions where she chose men over me or even my sister. So then at 12, I finally met my father, who all my life I wanted to meet this man, and indirectly he rejected me. He rejected me when he finally met me. And his first words to me, interestingly enough, was that he thought that I was going to be gay. This was one of the first things that he said. And we'll unhash that later. Because I was raised by all women, that's what he concluded. He thought that I was going to be gay. And when I say he rejected me, my father had 2 sons prior to me, my 2 oldest brothers. So when I finally met him, and this was 2 brothers outside of my mom. So these are brothers that I met at the same time I met my father at 12 years old. But he only had 1 daughter, which was my sister from my mom. So me and my sister are from my father. So I can tell he was not really interested in me. And I was the one who was interested in him. My sister didn't want anything to do with him because, backstory, my father, the reason why we were not raised by him was because he attempted to kill my mom by stabbing her multiple times in the back. So he did time in prison, which in turn is how we ended up in Haiti, and a whole nother story to share if I was to unravel that. But I was the one that wanted to meet my father. I was interested in meeting this guy. Met him, indirectly he rejected me, and I could tell he was interested in his daughter, his baby girl, his only girl. So his intentions were to really spend time with her. He kind of brushed me off to the side. Cool. Because of my low self-esteem, I was strategic. Hey, my sister doesn't want anything to do with him, so let me go ahead and talk to her to warm her up to want to be around him, which will give me opportunities to be around him. So these are different things that I did because of my low self-esteem to try to be affirmed by people that I wanted to be affirmed by. And this is what I had to kind of ask, where did this low self-esteem? I'm not going to go into the process at this point of the actual breakdown because it's an evolution. So I'm talking about the whys right now. Ask the whys to figure out where the heck did all this come from. I also had trust issues. Remember I said you need to understand, why do you have trust issues? Why do you have happiness? Why did certain things make you angry? So I had to ask why about trust issues. Why do I not trust people? So another thing that came to my mind as I'm asking why questions, I realized that my mom was the person that I looked to for trust. My mom, she despised liars. I understood that at a very, very young age. She did not like a liar. My mom was the one who taught me don't do drugs and things of that nature. And at one point in my life, mid-teens, I remember literally saying to her, are you doing drugs? And she was offended that I asked her that. But her environment, her friends seemed to imply that that's what was going on. And so with that, I actually, I asked her and she said, no, I would never do drugs. I don't do any drugs. And she was offended. And as time lapsed, I actually saw my mom take a pull of some weed and sniff a line of coke. And I remember that day like it was yesterday, making a covenant that if I cannot trust my mother, I can't trust anyone. That was the day that I made the decision that I could trust no one. And I lived up to that to probably about 7 years ago. And I've been married for 14 years. So be mindful. I went into marriage with love with zero trust. But I found out where the root of that came from. And I was able to identify it and figure out where in the world did that come from. But my mother, I made a covenant. And also another thing that was contributing to trust issues, which actually bled over to sex, was I would hear my older sisters talk to guys about their bodies and stuff like that when they were in relationships with them. And then when they break up, I hear them tell them same stories, the opposite stories to their friends about the guys' bodies. Use your imagination. When they spoke to their friends. So what I concluded in those experiences were when women gave compliments, they were lying. So anytime a woman gave a compliment, she was actually telling a lie. This is the conclusion that I had at a young age from listening to other people's conversations and back and forth with their respective mates at the time. Another thing that I had going on as an adult, and this is just me going through, like we're talking about self-esteem, but I'm also talking about how you have to be a student of self so that you can understand why you get mad, why you get happy, why very, very high sex drive. That has always been the case with me, high sex drive. And in my relationship, that was a major thing. And I even concluded that in order for you to be, which this goes to those who read or have read the book, the 4 love languages or 5 love languages. So touch is one of them. And I'm glad I didn't read the book prior to coming to this conclusion, but sex was huge for me. It was my way. Words are so powerful to me. And to me, sex was the way that you express the words that you cannot formulate with your mouth, with the English language. That was my way of expressing to you in a manner that I cannot articulate through my words. That was big to me. So in my mind, because I concluded that it was my wife's job to give that to me so that I could feel love. You follow what I'm saying? So whenever that lacked in my relationship, my wife did not love me was what my mindset was. So where did this high sex drive come from? I had to ask why questions. Well, I was introduced to porn at 4 years old from my oldest sister's friends next door. So I literally visualized, saw porn, and in my mind replaced the guy with me in the porn at 4 years old. And I used to get in trouble for how, for lack of a better term, horny I was as a kid. Then I finally started experiencing sexual encounters at 6. So I'm 37 years old. I've been experimenting with sex for 37 years. Physically, for probably 30, 31, 32 years. I've been experiencing sex with older women, women my age, literally having sex since I'm 6 years old. So now bring that and attach the fact that I'm getting rejected from dad. My mom was a true dad in the form that she was not a hugging mom. She was not a, I love you, let me kiss you, boo boo. She was, you got to cut, get up, boy, go put some alcohol on it, not peroxide, alcohol on it, and get over it. If boys came to my house to fight me, it was, you're going to fight them or you're going to fight me. There was nothing. So that is what I craved in relationships to compensate what I lacked coming up. So this is what I had to self-analyze and ask myself these why questions to come to these type of conclusions. Again, sharing as much as I can so that you can see yourself in this process and walk yourself through the relationship with yourself process. And I'm going to just stop right there. I'll come back to those things as we go to the other parts. Michelle, at this time, if you want to share anything, you can. If you don't, I can understand, and I'll go to the next part.
Oh, no, well, first, my heart goes out to you because, I mean, low self-esteem is in some ways a reaction, right? And so, you know, there are some things you clearly were reacting to in terms of feeling valued, but I wanted to kind of ask, in terms of this conversation, how are you defining self-esteem so we can determine whether it's low or high? Because those are experiences that you had that most likely contributed to behaviors, but you know, it could have been described as there's just a lot of different ways to interpret that. It could be, there's so many different things. So I just really want to know how you define self-esteem, so I can kind of help.
That's good. That's an excellent question. If I was to define low self-esteem in one word, I would call it shame. I would call it shame. I would say that it's something that does not allow me to like myself, to love myself. It is an identity that I adopted as who I am that is inaccurate. So that is that's how, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can you tell me how the experiences link to shame for you?
How they link to shame? You mind elaborating on that question?
So did you ever feel ashamed that you were molested or exposed to porn? Were you ever ashamed that you had a high sex drive? Were you ever ashamed that your mom wasn't emotive? Did that bring shame, or did that make you frustrated or angry or just unsure? So you were trying to figure out, I'm not getting what I'm looking for at home, so there's another way I'm looking for it. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, did you feel shame at that point?
No, I didn't feel shame. And that's what's dangerous about shame. You don't feel it. You just call it what you think it is. So I named myself something that I was not. And that's what I mean by you call something that you're not. No human being on this earth is anything that is negative. I don't care what you've done. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care what you've done. I don't care who you are. No human being at the core of who they were created to be is a negative thing. And for me to say I don't have value, that is inaccurate. That's inaccurate. And we're gonna.
You said that about yourself at some point. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as I concluded, the reason why I started the show by giving you examples of what low self-esteem could look like or signs of it is because I needed the person that's listening to see what it looks like to kind of identify that that's what you have going on. And when I concluded that I had low self-esteem, the why questions led me to those events that happened in my life and the stories that I attached to those events that defined who I concluded I was at the time. And that is what the shame aspect is. And shame is not necessarily feeling a certain way or feeling down as much as it is identifying yourself as a thing in which you are not. So in a negative sense. And so you can be guilty. I could be, all right, so I could say, man, I feel bad that I failed the test because I didn't study as well as I should have. And I could also say, I'm a failure. I'm a failure is shame. I feel bad is guilty. So I feel guilty that I didn't do something a certain way. I am a failure is identifying myself as a thing. And that's the difference between shame and guilt. And that's what I mean by self-esteem is an identity issue as well as shame. And I say identity issue because that's not really who you are. Anything that you think negative about yourself, you might have a shortcoming in that area, but that does not define you as a person. So shame is identifying yourself as such a thing or even an event and allowing that to dictate how you respond to things or life in general. So that's what I mean by low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is concluding that you are something negative or less than, or from a value standpoint, low. And that's just inaccurate. And the whole point of this is to investigate how you came up to that ridiculous, and I'm calling it ridiculous, conclusion, so that we can, from there, with the minds that we have, which we'll get into sooner than later, realize how ridiculous it is and work our way out of that particular shameful state.
Okay. So there were some of the things that you described about the experiences that you went through, and I'm just trying to connect the dots so I can follow along and color in. Is that so? Some of the behaviors and that you expressed after going through what you did brought you to a place where you realized there was something about yourself that you were calling low. Is that what? So, like, at what these things happened to you, when did you discover that all contributed to low self-esteem? Was it what made you feel low self-esteem? Was it you felt sad one day and you went, why am I feeling sad? Or the trust issue with, in life, did you all of a sudden have a situation that triggered this pursuit of why? In order to figure out what this source is.
Got it. So first, let me clarify that when I brought up trust and when I brought up high sex drive, those had nothing to do with low self-esteem. Those were me sharing that when I stated you should be able to articulate why certain things trigger your anger, happiness, excitement, frustration, humor. Those were me showing you how certain things that I realized that triggered things, I investigated myself to come to the conclusion and be able to articulate why it was that way. Those did not contribute to me concluding that I had low self-esteem. Now,
that's where I got confused. So help me.
Got it. No, that's a valid statement. Now, from me concluding that I had a low self-esteem, what things contributed to it? When I could not no longer blame my wife for the things we were having issues with in our relationships. When I couldn't blame, like when I was honest with myself and I was like, well, that's really not her fault. It forced me to look at me. So as I began to look more at me, I had to say, well, dang, it's me. But now that I see that it's me, why in the world am I doing it? And then from there, it was the realization, wow, you have a low self-esteem. And from there, now it's, okay, I have a low self-esteem. Where the heck did that come from? And then all of the questions, the why. Well, why do I do that? Why did I do that? This is why.
Well, having successfully faced and overcome low self-esteem in most areas. I will not say all, because I think low self-esteem can manifest in a couple of different areas in your life. But in the relationship one, I think that low self-esteem manifested in some of the ways that you described, such as, feeling like you have to overcompensate for value. So that may be giving up money or your physical space or your time and without any return because you're trying to earn something.
Yeah.
Or create value,
Yeah.
or get validation in the areas that you feel less than. So, like you said, it's an external affirmation versus an internal affirmation. And I think the trigger for it becoming a problem, because to be honest, it was a coping mechanism for a long time. It really wasn't a problem. It was just how it was. And then it was a problem when it started to be the lack of people giving. Like I wasn't receiving. I was putting out more than I was receiving. And that deficit started to make me question, what is going on? Like, why am I constantly having to refill my tank? Why am I constantly empty? Why am I constantly feeling like I'm giving, I'm not getting anything? And that triggered the question, why do you feel like you have to give so much?
Yeah.
Like, what is it about giving that creates this feeling better? And that was a source of low self-esteem for me. But I do understand that, there's something that will always make you think, why am I always feeling this bad?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and bad can be a lot of different things. It could be bad, scared, bad, ugly, bad, not valuable, bad. Why am I feeling bad?
Yeah.
And that tends to make you go, I don't want to feel bad anymore. I just don't want to feel bad anymore. And
I literally remember, like, since you asked the question, like, how did you know that I suffer from low self-esteem from a relationship standpoint? I remember always telling my wife, I need reassurance. I would say it all the time. I need reassurance. I need reassurance. I need reassurance. I openly said that. But even openly saying that and the vulnerability that comes with it, that's not her responsibility. It's just not a responsibility. And that was me not realizing that I had a low self-esteem, but I did catch myself and I had to analyze, like, where's that come? Why do I need reassurance? What do I need that for? And I mean, it went so far as to me seeking other moms. I have so many moms to replace what my mom didn't give to me. I literally stayed in terrible relationships where I was treated like crap. Because their moms were great and I wasn't willing to release their relationship because I did not want to lose their mom in the process of getting rid of that relationship. That's how bad my low self-esteem was. I was like in my early, we're talking early middle school, like my experiences with girls, I was cheated on. So all of these things contributed to my thought process of my value. So again, relationship from a standpoint of my mom, no compassion, no nurturing whatsoever. She was just
Mr. Nurturing. Look at
real.
you.
No,
Mr.
but I mean, we're gonna get to that, but I have to lay the foundation of where it all came from and what the process looks like. So yeah, like these are contributing factors that I realized as to why I had low self-esteem. So yeah, are we gonna go into step 2, or you got some more you want to share from a?
I'm clear. Okay.
All right. So step 2. This is a tough one. Forgive yourself. Interesting statement, huh? Forgive yourself for your low self-esteem. It says, while you are dating yourself and learning yourself, forgive yourself for anything you've done or any experiences you've had that caused you to blame yourself for how bad or negative you feel about you. So many people are walking around consciously or unconsciously in bondage with guilt and shame for something or things that they have done as young, immature children. If this is you, you are no longer that young, immature child, and you wouldn't make the same decisions that you've made in the past because the results of your poor decision making have matured you. Forgive the child that you were and be proud of who you've become. There's also a lot of people who are walking around consciously or unconsciously in bondage with guilt and shame because at one time in their life, they were gullible enough to be convinced that the experience that they went through as a victim was their fault. As an adult, this is probably the best time for you to revisit that experience. In hindsight, looking back on that moment or those moments, can you really say that that was your fault? If that was if that was to happen to you today with the mindset that you have now, would you really be able to be convinced that that happening to you is your fault? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. It's probably not even possible for you to be in a predicament where that could have happened to you again. The point is, it wasn't your fault then. And you can forgive yourself now for being tricked into believing that it was for all this time. The forgive yourself process is a tough process because after revisiting the painful memories that you've buried, you have to challenge yourself to change your belief about a lie you've been believing about yourself for most of your life. Though this process is tough, it's necessary to get to the next phase of curing your low self-esteem. So let's unpack this. So forgive yourself. Let's first start with the whole thing about forgiveness, because I get questions about this all the time. So you want me to just forget that my daddy did this or didn't do this? You want me to forget that my uncle did this or he didn't do this? You want me to forget that my mom did this or didn't do this? Forgiveness is not for the other person. It is for you. And let me explain what that looks like. It's not saying that you forget what they did. It's not saying that you forget what they didn't do. It's saying that you acknowledge what they did. You acknowledge the pain that came with it, but you release them of being the person that is the one that has to fix how you feel about it. And realize this, because I'm bringing this up at a time where I said, forgive yourself. Because now it's like, okay, if you just said that, you're saying forgive the other person. Yes, as a child, you were another person. And I need you to forgive that person. I need you to forgive that person, that child, even the person before this show that believed whatever it is that you thought happened was your fault, or that you're responsible for, so that you can release that person from being responsible for how you feel about yourself right now. So how did this look for me? So hurt people hurt people. For the first quarter of my life, I was the most angry, evil person because of all these things. Like I was, which is so interesting, because the things that I went through, it allows for me to relate to others and also to empathize with their situation. And a lot of things that women concluded were the same exact things that I concluded, which is why it was easy for me to just expose the whole men are a certain way and women are a certain way, because I was the one that said all women are dogs. So I'm gonna treat them like they treat me. So I was in these streets, for lack of a better term. I was treating them badly because that was my defense mechanism. You're already gonna hurt me, so let me go ahead and do what I'm gonna do. Since you're doing what you're doing to me, let me go ahead and get it out the way. So I already know how you're gonna get down. I actually concluded that all women were gonna be the same, so I started treating them bad. I was disrespectful. I didn't respect authority. I did not like myself. So in turn, I did not like others, and I treated them the same way. And because of that, I have to forgive myself. I have to forgive myself for believing the lie that I'm not valuable. I had to forgive myself for believing the lie that I was not performing well when it came to sex or anything of that nature. I had to forgive myself for believing that I don't know. I did not have value. That was pretty much the core of the bulk of my actions.
Unlovable.
So
I mean, you have to admit that, you know, having a non-emotive parent makes you feel like you're unlovable. And so there's some parts of you that overcompensate for that always.
Oh yeah.
One of the things that popped out for me when you were talking was, you know, esteem is a belief. What is about what you believe about yourself. That's what esteem is, what's low or high. It's what you believe about yourself. And we tend to take action based on what we believe to be true. And as you so, you know, aptly described, you believe that, you know, somebody was going to undervalue you or cheat on you. So you took those actions based on what you believed. It just so happened that what you believe wasn't necessarily based on truth. It was based on circumstantial evidence, right? So it wasn't that you were evaluating every individual as the individual in front of you. You were bringing all of your beliefs to the table and treating them the way that you believed. And I think that's one of the things that, in order to unpack it, and when you say be self-reflective, it's really to check what your belief system is. Like, what do you really believe? And I think that it comes down to, you know, one of the exercises that I had gone through myself was, what is the first thing that comes to my mind after I say I am? You know, I mean, for me, at one point, I am fat was the first thing. Like, doesn't matter what I look like in my mind, I am fat, therefore, right? So then this whole story comes out. Or I am ugly, therefore, you know, they're not going to look at me. They're not going to treat me any sort of way. And so I think we kind of always overcompensate for that. And my personal self-esteem issue didn't make me angry. It made me feel invisible. And so by having low self-esteem, I became very silent about how I felt about things. And so I was very present for everyone else. But if I had no value, then why was I going to speak about what was important to me? Because it didn't make a difference. Nobody was going to listen anyway. Because of I am fat, or I am ugly, or I am, you know, not valuable. Therefore, da 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 da. So I wrote this whole story, a conspiracy theory in my mind that the whole world was conspiring against me. Right? To neutralize me, or to put me in a box, or whatever. So there's this whole story I had written that I was walking out in my own life, but it was a theory. It wasn't even true.
Exactly.
Theory.
And that's, I mean, that's what we're forgiving ourselves for the story that we made, the conspiracy that we created, which 9 times out of 10 is inaccurate. And we never go to the source to.
So we just.
I'm not disputing that at all. It's definitely it's triggered by something, but the trigger could be, and that's why this is perfect for the time frame in which for this being now as a time frame to reflect, learn yourself, and then make those decisions. Because as an adult, your mindset and your wisdom can look back at that child and say, that was dumb. I could give you one prime example. I remember being at the barber shop, and the barber, my barber, he was cutting someone else's hair, and he was cutting the guy's hair, and he was saying, man, his hair just falling right into a taper, and smiling and cutting the guy's hair, enjoying cutting the guy's hair. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I want my hair to fall into a taper. Now, I don't know why I thought, again, I'm always self-reflecting, but that moment stayed in my head. And I realized the conversation that was had prior to it. He was actually cutting someone else's client's hair. So he was actually laughing and joking with the guy that he works with, saying that the guy's hair falls into a taper.
Which means the other guy doesn't work so hard.
To make the other guy whose client it really was jealous that he was taking his client. So he was joking, saying that his hair fell into a taper. I'm thinking, because of my lack of self-worth, I would like for him to feel that my hair came into a taper the way that it was, but it had nothing to do with me. It was me taking myself, and because my lack of self-worth at that time, concluding that I was not enough, and it's something as simple as a haircut. And this is what I'm saying by, like, at this time, this is the best time to date yourself, investigate yourself, why you feel the way that you feel, so that you can look back on those moments that you came to the conclusion of whatever your belief system was that got you to the place of low self-esteem and say, that doesn't make sense. Why in the world did I think that? That's not true about me. But I allowed that experience, which has nothing to do with me, determine how I feel about me. Go ahead. I see your hand up.
So in order to do that, though, at some point you have to believe that your voice matters, right? So you can't rewrite a story if you don't believe that your voice matters. You can't forgive yourself if you have already at the point that it doesn't matter. It does matter. What you decide about yourself, it does matter. So you have to give yourself back the authority to write your own.
I honestly don't know that you would even go through this process if you weren't in a place where you're trying to make change or to take control of your life. I don't think that you would get to step 2 or even dive into step 1 if you were under the mindset that you don't have a voice or your voice doesn't matter or I'm mentally mature enough to attack this thing. This is I mean, you're talking about going into that closet and pulling up stuff that you have buried for, I don't know, however many years, thinking that it would never fester again when indirectly your actions are a product of those things that you press down. So I really don't think that a person would get to step 2 or even attack step 1 with the mindset that they don't have a worthy voice or at least a mature mindset to at least look at or attack this. I don't think we would start peeling things and looking in closets that we've closed for I don't know however many years and get to a point where we say, I'm not smart enough. It might, if our low self-esteem or shame is so deep, we might look at it and still agree that it was our fault. But I don't see us saying that, well, I don't have a voice in the matter. I do think it's worth continuously visiting and looking at it with the mind's eye that you have now at the same exact situation. I remember when my daughter, she wanted to stay in the tub one night. She was probably 3, maybe 3 or 4, and she wanted to stay in the tub and play. So we threw some toys and rubber duckies and everything in there, and we went to go get her out of the tub. And of course, sitting in the water all that time, her hands was wrinkled. And I said, oh my goodness, your hands are wrinkled. And my daughter, with the most sincere eyes, she said to me, she said, please don't iron my hands. Okay. And the story that she told herself is, I saw daddy ironing. Daddy irons wrinkled clothes. My hands are wrinkled. Iron is hot. Because daddy said, hot iron. Don't touch the iron. Iron is hot. My hands are wrinkled. Daddy, please don't iron my hands. Because she concluded that her hands were wrinkled. And there's so many, at the age that we've made so many decisions that we live by. Looking back at it now, if we took the time to investigate ourselves and go through and unpack those things, we will realize how ridiculous our thought processes were and pull those from the root and take our lives back so we can change the end story. Because right now we're living in a story that's not ours. When we have that child that we're allowing to dictate who we are, it's not until that child changes that story at that time that we're going to be able to move forward. And that's just not going to happen. So now is the time to look at that time frame, look at it from the mature eye that you have now and say, wow, how did I come to that conclusion? That's why it's imperative to investigate yourself and how you came to those conclusions so that when you look at it now, this is the best time to look at it so that you can pull that from the root and say, that was ridiculous. Clearly that's not the case because now you literally can give yourself evidence to your own investigation and say, that's not even correct. So that's step 2. Anything you want to add to step 2 before we go to 3? All right, cool. Step 3, guess what step 3 is? Forgive others. Remember, I can't stress this enough. Forgiving is not disregarding the fact that they did or they did not do something. Remember, I stated earlier, at times we've been victims of something. So to think that I'm saying that I want you to disregard the fact that he did something is ludicrous. It's not true. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is realize what they did or did not do. Acknowledge the feeling and emotions that came with it and how it actually contributed to how you navigated through life up until this point. But take away their responsibility for making you feel better. Because what's happening is, go ahead.
I know I wrote this down, but I think it's moving towards something instead of moving away from something, right? So it's not taking back your voice, but it's like moving toward your better self. Like pursue your best self, and as you move away from what you're trying to forgive, versus focusing on that. You know what I mean? Like it's just a paradigm, just a slight paradigm shift. But I think it's easier to pull yourself forward than push yourself forward. To have a life pull.
I don't want anybody to look at this process as easy at all. I need you to sit and stew in what it is that you experience. I don't want that to be something that we're walking away from, because if you're walking away from is what got us here. We need to sit in this. We have to address the emotion.
I think that the reflection part is a responsibility. It's taking responsibility and literally being able to, like you said earlier, articulate.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let me read this, and then we're gonna dive into this third one right here. So what it reads, it says, forgive others. It says, A, forgive others for the things that they have or haven't done to or for you that have you believing negative thoughts about yourself. B, forgive others for the things that they have or haven't done with or for you that have you believing that because of what they have or haven't done with or for you, that they've robbed you of the opportunity to be or become someone great. What I can assure you is, if you are suffering from a low self-esteem, you've done things and made decisions that have hurt not only yourself, but others as well. I say that to point out that victimizers are or were once victims. In other words, as I stated earlier, hurt people, including themselves. It's just hard to see this truth or have compassion for the victimizer when you're looking at them through the eyes of their victim. The information above isn't important to help you forgive your victimizers. It's important to help you forgive yourself. If you have a low self-esteem, you are suffering from underlying self-blame, self-hatred, and guilt. And if you realize that this is a result of being a victim, it will make it easier for you to forgive yourself for how you've treated yourself and others as a result of it. Realizing your underlying self-struggles enough to be able to forgive yourself makes it easier for you to empathize with your victimizer and forgive him or her for hurting you as a result of him or her sharing the same underlying struggles as you. This is why forgiving yourself first is probably the only way that you'll be able to forgive others, because it's the only hope that you have at seeing a victimizer's actions as an outcry of his or her inner pain and identity issues. This shift in how you view your victimizers will help you empathize with their self-hate, blame, and guilt in order to forgive them. The forgive others process is a difficult process because it takes a lot of work to see that your victimizer was more than likely at one point in time a victim who became a victimizer, which led to you becoming a victim, since hurt people hurt people. Though this process is probably the most difficult, it's necessary to get to the next and final phase of curing your self-esteem. So this is what my process looked like. As an adult, I had to go back and say, hey, my mom, remember I brought up the whole abuse thing? How in the world can you listen to a babysitter tell your child that, oh, he wet his pants, so I had to make him stand by a open fire furnace until his pants melted to the back of his legs? How do you accept that thought process? What kind of mother are you? How can you allow other men to be the primary person or the primary decision when it comes to your children? How do you do that? How do you lie to your child when it comes to saying you do drugs? How can you do that? What kind of mom are you? Now, as an adult, and I look back and I had to realize and pull from the root, well, she was a mom that gave what she had. That's what she was. She also was a mother who, remember I told you she got stabbed. She was a mother who ran in the house to get her son after she escaped when her dad actually jumped out of the closet. So she ran outside of the house and she literally escaped my father who came out to stab her. But she left me. So she ran back to danger to get me. How can a mom that does not love her child do such a thing? What I also found out was the mom that I'm questioning her love for me. She always said that she was not going to stop having children until she had a son. I ended up being the final son. I also had to hear from my sisters how she felt that they felt that I was a quote unquote favorite or something because she always shared that story. Why would she even share a story like that? Because she really was passionate about me being the baby that she always wanted. So in hindsight, the evidence doesn't align. Her decision making may have been terrible. The choices that she made may have been off. But did she not love me and did I not have value? I beg to differ. She wasn't gonna stop having children until she had me. She would not have ran back into the house when my father jumped out to kill her to go back and get me because she escaped. If I did not have value, she would not have risked her life to get me. She would not have, after she gained consciousness, say, I'm going to see my baby, because actually after that, her and I were in the hospital at the same time. I was suffering for lead poison. I was on the verge of dying. My grandmother found out. So when she found out that I wasn't feeling well after she finally gained consciousness, she said she was not leaving. She wanted to see my baby and she would not stand still until she saw me. So also the whole maneuver with me to Haiti to where I was in a predicament where I was abused, that was her escaping my father, who actually was getting out of prison that year or the year after. So who thinks rationally when they're trying to escape from losing their lives? So there's so many things that when I reflected, my sisters, when I was old enough to realize, remember I told you, every time when a woman gives me a compliment, I'm thinking it's a lie. I'm old enough to reflect and say, well, they were upset because the relationship didn't go well, so they just threw shade at their girlfriends, and that had nothing to do with me. So now I have a conscience, like I have a complex about compliments, which was ruining my life, period. Like I literally, remember I told you, reassurance. I'm putting up pictures of me nude on nude sites to get validation of me from other people, because I felt that I was not getting enough validation from my wife. Now, the crazy thing about it is I'm doing that and I'm getting a whole bunch of compliments again. But what's my belief about compliments? So what I did was I showed pictures of me nude without the face, because now you don't have a need to lie to me because you don't know me. So this is my way. This is my plan to figure out, am I being lied to? Is this the real truth? Whatever. So I'm doing all of these things to seek validation. And then when I get the validation, because I don't believe when women give compliments, they're telling the lie. I'm making it worse for myself. So this is the kind of ridiculous stuff that we do while we're having self-esteem issues, because we don't realize or take the time to investigate where do these beliefs come from, and come to a place at a time where we are mature enough to realize how crazy this thought process is. where did that come from? And like I said, when I realized that, no, my sisters, they were just upset at the guy for doing whatever he did. So now they throwing shade with their girlfriends to try to make themselves feel better about the experience that they had. So it's a whole, like, this time frame and forgiving others. Like, I had to forgive them for what they did, and they didn't even know they did it. That's another thing about forgiveness.
I think that's a huge part of the conspiracy theory that we write for ourselves, is that we attribute motives to people that we haven't even bothered to ask them, was that their intent? Like, we attribute and write the story as true. Like, and then go find corroborating evidence to validate our position without going back to the source. And to your point, like, I was able to get to the root of understanding why I had self-esteem issues, but I really couldn't ever get to the why, because I couldn't articulate it. So I think one of the most revealing things that I did, I had a coach at the time, and they kept asking me why, and I would give these superficial answers because I had already worked myself into believing it. I got this. It's not that serious. But I was giving very high-level answers, so very like, well, because, I got dropped on my head as a baby, like everybody else. Like, so what's the problem? You just get through it. But that wasn't the answer. Like, what is it? And so she was like, you're not connecting. You're not connecting with the reason we're having this conversation. And so I had to actually, like, I couldn't see it. So I recorded myself trying to answer the question, why? Wow. I watched myself go around the bush like 20 times. I was like, you are just circling the wagon, like, just circling the wagon. But I could see my body language when I was recording myself, because I was trying to, it was funny because I just started talking and I was like, wow, you just have worked yourself up into a story that don't make no sense. Like, but it was by myself, so I could hold myself accountable.
And that's the thing, like, even with my dad, like, after we actually finally had a relationship, it was a realization that this man didn't know you. Yes, he probably did. He was interested in his daughter, because he never had a daughter. He only had a son. But to be perfectly honest with you, I think that, from a storytelling time frame, it might have been better for him to choose a better choice of words. I thought you were going to be gay. Maybe say I thought you might have been feminine because you were raised by women. But to conclude that I'm going to be gay, but still, that's his thought. Just like I had my own thoughts, that's his thought. Is it a valid statement? I think it might very well be. I'm raised by 3 women. It might be, I might be lacking in a masculine area from a dad or a male standpoint. I can see how he could come to that conclusion. Was he way off base? Yes, because he didn't realize what mama I had. My mother ain't have no. She made sure I was tough, which is where the balance and we'll get into where that comes from, where the blessing in disguise came from as to how she was as a parent to me. The thing that I also wanted was actually or lacked was what I needed to get me through. But again, in hindsight, me looking back at the conclusions that I had, it helped me to forgive them. Like, my father, he didn't know me. My sisters didn't even know that they were contributing to that. My mom just was the mom that she knew she could be. And to be perfectly honest with you, when I get to the like, you're talking about someone's my pants stuck to my legs, melted to my legs. My mom was focused on getting her child to the hospital and getting taken care of. She wasn't thinking of, how in the world is my child's pants burning? Why didn't you take the pants off? Why didn't you, like, her whole thing was, let me get my baby boy right. So listening to the story, yeah, that sounds like a terrible mom, but at the same time, you know how devastating it is to come to a child who's literally, their pants are melted and you can't pull the pants down. So her thing was, I got my child out of there, got him to the hospital, and we got him treated, and that was it. And we never even addressed the woman again. And that was another woman that I when I got to this digging phase, because I knew I carried a lot of resentment for her. When I found out, because I wanted to apologize to her, I didn't want to apologize to her. I wanted to meet her and tell her that she was forgiven. Let me correct my statement. And when I found out, at the age that I was, I actually found out that she was dead. So I couldn't tell her that she was forgiven. And I was so into this whole digging things out that remember how I stated the whole victimizer thing. I wanted to give her some peace because I felt that she more than likely had been carrying that for I don't know how many years. So I'm when I say forgiveness, I literally mean forgive that person for what they've done. See them as a possible victim, or try to see them as a possible victim. And the reason why that's important is because if you can't forgive people, you're not forgiving yourself. I can assure you that, which is contributing to your issue in the first place. So that's why I say forgive yourself first, because when you realize that you can be forgiven, then you can forgive other people, which is another part of the healing process. Because it's not until we see the evidence. Remember, we're talking about the stories that we created now. We created the stories about ourselves that cause us to have the low self-esteem. Whether we had the experience or not, there's other people that had the same type of experiences that don't have low self-esteem. So the stories that we told ourselves are the conclusions that we came to. So if we can't forgive ourselves, we don't even know that it's possible to be done, which in turn prevents us from forgiving some other people, but at the same time, it prevents us from forgiving ourselves, which definitely keeps us anchored in the low self-esteem area or state of mind that you're in. You have to be able to forgive. If you can't forgive that person, it's because you can't forgive you. And it's imperative so that you can take the actual power of you changing your mindset and your belief about yourself back. Go ahead, Michelle.
You're so funny. I didn't say I was gonna say anything.
No, I see the nods. I
But it's
figured
about
you
taking
had
the
some
power.
shit. Good.
It's about taking the power back. I think that's like when we had an earlier episode, we were talking about how loving someone, you have to love yourself. Otherwise, you don't know what love feels like. Like you have to have something against which to compare it. Same thing with forgiveness. How do you know? You can't even celebrate forgiveness if you haven't experienced it. You know, and forgiving yourself is it's a root thing, and it's that liberating second where you go, hold on, it's gonna be all right. You know, and I could have made the same mistake that they did. Given the circumstances that if I was in their circumstances, I might have made the same poor decision, and that's the empathy. You know, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and forgiving them for not being perfect. I think one of the problems with low self-esteem is that it's really a crash of expectations in reality, because your expectations are that your parents are perfect. Your expectations are that grown people are not going to lie to you as a kid. Your expectation is that everybody around you is supposed to treat you nice and love you, and that's an expectation. But the reality is that we got a bunch of humans running around who broken too, and they keep breaking, hurt people, and we go, well, you're not supposed to be hurt, because the fairy tale says you are supposed to be a good, sane, logical human being who would not purposefully hurt somebody. That's crazy. But the reality is we got a bunch of crazy people running around hurting people.
That was another thing too, like you said, you brought up the whole thing about my mom lying and me concluding that was I would never trust another person. All she was doing was hiding the facade that she put up for me. Protecting the facade that she put up. Like now I have to, if I tell them that I smoke, well, now I can't tell them not to do drugs. If I tell them that I sniff coke, I can't tell them not to do drugs. You understand what I'm saying? She's protecting me and her
human thing, which is don't show your vulnerability.
Exactly.
And put yourself out there to be hurt.
Most certainly.
And that's normal. And once you can see that as that's the cause of the reason why was that she didn't want to embarrass herself, or like put herself in your eyes as less than, then you understand, oh, well, I would do the same thing. I would embarrass myself. I don't want to be embarrassed either. But it's a child that's expecting more maturity or more responsibility than is really reasonable. And I think that's why, this self-reflection process and being honest with yourself makes you a little bit more willing to be vulnerable and honest with others, so that you don't find yourself on the other end of this experience, right? Like, so you don't project inconsistency. Like,
but it gives you there's so much power in vulnerability. That's what blows my mind. Like when I listen to how people try to avoid it, there's some, because in the end, people aren't vulnerable because they don't want things to get out. But if you're the one that puts it out, no one else can figure it out. Like you have control over it all, and you rob anyone of having control over you because you've shared it. Not to mention, you liberate so many other people who think that they're going through it by themselves. Like me sharing this in my information and my story, it allows for the other. What I love about this, I've been on some men's shows, and they're so masculine and macho. But when they see me share, they immediately start sharing. But had I not shared, they would not have shared, because they concluded that men don't share. Men aren't in tune with their emotions. And if you're not, guess what? Your emotions are running you. So if you can't identify them, you can't articulate where it came from, you are not controlling you. And if you think men don't have emotions, then what are you? Mad is an emotion. Angry is an emotion. All of their emotions, like, it's really okay to have them. It's not okay to allow them to conclude what you're going to do or take action. It's something that you acknowledge as something that's, hey, for some reason I'm getting mad. So you investigate why you got mad and then make a logical decision off of that. Don't allow that to make a decision, but you definitely need to get in tune with your emotions. The actual, like you said, is taking the power back. If you are waiting for the person that didn't do right by you to say sorry, it's not going to happen. And if they do say sorry, it still doesn't change what happened. So you can either
you still have to have the power to accept the apology. You have the power to accept or deny the apology.
And that's the thing. Like, even, all right, let's say miraculously they apologize. You still have to decide as to whether you're going to be okay with that apology to move forward. So you need to take the power back now. Stop allowing them, whether it be your younger self, your dumber self, or the other person, your sister, your brother, your mother, your uncle, whomever did whatever it is that contributed to how you feel about yourself right now. If you are giving them the power to determine as to whether you are going to be successful from here on out, you're not going to be. They're not going to give you that power, because in the end, it's still a decision. If they apologize, it's a decision. You can't go back in time, so that's all you have to live off of. And if they die like the lady that I wanted to go and share that she was forgiven, then you're really messed up. You've given all of your power of who you could become to some event. And that is dangerous. That's more dangerous than the actual situation that you've been in. And that's no matter what the situation is. That's more dangerous than that, to allow them to hold on to who you become from that particular event. And it's not until they do something about it that you'll be okay. That's not wise. It's not wise, and it's not healthy at all, because you'll never get to where or who you've been created to become.
I think the myth that we're busting right here is that abdicating responsibility for your life and blaming other people for what you choose to live out is really it's not being responsible. It's being irresponsible. Like, it's your responsibility to live your life. Like, so giving the responsibility to somebody else and to have done all the right things, at some point you get to the age of reckoning or the age of awareness where you get to make decisions. Absolutely. Before a certain age, you don't have the tools, you don't have the context, you don't know. That's why you absolutely are believing all these truths. But at some point, you are an age of knowing, self-determination, like, where am I going to be? What am I going to do? Yes, all these things happen, but I'm still breathing. And at what point am I going to take responsibility for who I want to be? And it's usually like people who have, left the state they were born in to go live a life because they felt constrained by whatever they were living in. So they made a decision to leave.
Yeah.
Or people who have made a decision to go to therapy. Well, because this isn't working this way, so I'm going to decide to do something else. I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to, like people who, you're never going to be smart enough. You're never going to go to school. Well, there are people who say, that's nice. That's what you believe. At some point, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to go to school and I'm going to do something. So self-esteem, usually at some point, you get to the point where you hit that wall. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of just being in pain. I'm sick and tired of not feeling like I'm enough. And what you do at that moment is your responsibility. You can either lay down under the bus and let it roll over you for another 3-4 times, or you can take action on stuff you hear, such as this conversation, and say, wait a minute, I have some control over what I think. Nobody can get in there and control that but you. That's your brain. You can control what goes in. You can control what you see. You can control what you have 2 seconds or 30 seconds, a minute, I don't know, between taking the information in and then going back out.
Which brings us to step 4.
You have some time to make a decision.
The final step 4 is change your mind about what you feel and believe about yourself. And it says,
it is a belief. It is a belief that can be adjusted.
You decide how you feel, and how you feel is typically a direct reflection of your expectations and beliefs of outside sources. Your environment, the way you were raised, your parents' involvement in your life experiences, how people and victimizers treated you, and other outside sources are contributing factors to your perspective of life. But your belief system and expectations of those outside sources are the determining factors that produce your responses to life and your outcomes. A lot of people believe that it is because of outside sources, contributing factors, that they are who they are or can't become who they aspire to be. This belief system is far from the truth and, most importantly, very dangerous. It's very dangerous because this belief leaves all the power of your present and who you can or could become in the future in the minds of those outside sources. If this false belief were true, the outside sources that have all of the control over your destiny will have will have to literally go back into time and change the past or apologize for their past actions in order for you to be healed of who you are and could become because of them. Going back into time is impossible, and the apology is not likely because the people that you blame for how damaged you feel you are typically don't even know that they've contributed to your current state. And the ones that you do tell or have told that they are the reason that you are the way that you are, very rarely will own their role in your state of being to the point that they will apologize for the actions in your past or lack thereof. It's imperative that you shift your belief and expectations of outside sources in order to release the hold that their part in your life is having on how you feel about yourself and your ability to become more than who you currently are. If your current belief is that contributing factors, outside sources, must change what they've done in the past, change who or what they currently are in the present, or that they must apologize for what they did or didn't contribute to your life in the past in order for you to become or become who you believe you should be, then who you want to become isn't likely to ever happen. Now that you know why you must change your mind and what you feel and believe about yourself and what thought process might have kept you from doing so up until now, let's discuss how to change your mind about what you feel and believe about yourself. The way to change your mind about what you feel and believe about yourself is to replace the negative lies that you're consuming about yourself daily. The news, most forms of media, the majority of the television shows that air, especially reality shows, the thoughts of persons who aren't positive that you allow in your life, and the many other contributing visual and auditory factors you are allowing to subconsciously feed you the current lies that you believe about yourself, to the things that speak the positive truth about your worth and who you are. Up until this point, I've been able to generalize about how to go about attacking the steps of curing your low self-esteem, but the only thing that I know that I can confidently recommend that has the truth about who you are, gives an accurate description of your worth, and has the highest success rate of helping people change what they feel and believe about themselves for the better is the Word of God. The gospel is the Bible, in the Bible, who people are and can be in Christ, to be exact. If you can find another source or doctrine that will help you with the challenge of changing your mind about your self-worth and value, go for it. But this is the only thing that was able to help me have a better relationship with myself, know my true value, and see how the enemy tricked and tries to trick me into believing lies about myself. Now that you know how to cure your low self-esteem, I want you to know that a low self-esteem is the foundational reason people pick the wrong mate and struggle to find and experience real love in a romantic relationship. Let's unpack that.
I agree with you. Your faith in finding out all of the I ams in the Bible. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am, God would have that we prosper and be in good health. And, I was just, there's so many good words in there. I would say that to the work of re-scripting yourself is a process that takes time, and I would employ all of the learning styles, whether that's hearing it, writing it, reading it, just all of those things to reinforce it. It's not easy to do, and I think what's cool about the process is it's like a curing process, meaning like when you're trying to get pure gold, like you make it really hot and all the impurities come up to the surface, you skim that off and you keep making it hot and you bring it up and you skim it off some more and you bring it up. So in the process of doing the work, from my own personal experience, I started with an understanding of one insecurity, which was about my some family members not speaking positively me as a child, which kind of started a script in me. And I found that one insecurity and I hooked onto that and I was trying to re-script that one. But then I realized once I got that one out, there was another one that came up. I was like, oh, I'm going to do that one too. And then got that. And then another one came up, and it's almost to the point where it started to be like a spring instead of a negative. Like at first it was very painful and it was hot and uncomfortable, but eventually it just became, yes, I'm so glad this is coming up. I'm so glad this is coming up.
Yeah.
Because I can address it, and that process does take time. It's kind of like, ew, I don't like it. Oh, this is just a process. Oh, this is great. Look how far I've grown. It's definitely the effort is worth it.
Most certainly. I mean, like I said, the gospel that hands down helped me. But the interesting thing about this is I remember this like it was yesterday. I was 6 years old. So now people, first and foremost, if you have problem with the gospel or religion, be perfectly honest with you right now. No love, KNOWLOVE. From no love to no love, which is the slogan of my company. That is a shout out to God. So if I lost you as a follower, bye-bye. Because that is not going to change. The foundation of what I've created here is a shout out to God. No love is no God. And God is love. So you can easily replace the word love with my company and even the slogan with God, and everything will make sense. Everything that I teach, everything that I'm coming from is a loving place, which is my journey with God. Interestingly enough, that is who spoke to me at 6 years of age, telling me to watch my mom and do the opposite. I didn't know what that voice was. All I know is that voice told me to watch my mom and do the opposite. And my whole life until I graduated from high school, which she didn't. That voice came back to me again. And it said, you see what I got you? And I said, yeah. And it said, now what I want you to do is watch what most people do and do the opposite. And all my life, I've been studying and paying attention to what most people do. Most people watch TV. I don't watch TV. Most people don't like to read. I don't like to read. If you see me in the setting where they say, everyone bow your heads and pray, I'm going to put my head up and open my eyes. I am wired because of how I've been living my life, listening to this voice at a time that I did not know was God speak to me. But as I read the word and I learned my worth and that he came down to die specifically for me, you can't get more valuable than that. And the other things that I realized and he revealed and shared with me, like him bringing my mom and making her as hard and tough as she was, because she was to be the father that I needed to be so that I could become who I needed to be, which is another reason why you need to analyze these situations. A lot of things that we lacked were to make us strong enough to be who we needed to be for the people that we are assigned to. So every single thing, my experience or lack thereof with my father, my abuse situations when I was coming up, my being exposed to sex at a very, very young age, all of those things created a gumbo that is tasting so good in my life right now, because if it wasn't for all the things that I've been through, y'all wouldn't even be able to receive what you're chewing off of me right now, because I have been, as she stated, put through fire and scraped off so many times so that I can be presented in a manner that you can see the reflection of God through my responses, the way that I treat people and the way that I am. And I had to see that negative and go through the negative aspect of my life so that I can come to you all with the balance, so that I can empathize with you when you are negative and show you the other side of where the positive is. So all of those things were necessary and intentional for me to become who I needed to be, so that I can help those who have gone through what I've gone through, but also to help them understand that they can go through and not just stay in the circumstances that they're in right now. So this topic has been delayed intentionally because the enemy does not want for you all to be liberated. The enemy does not want you to love yourself. The enemy does not want us to love one another. And I'm so glad that this recorded. I'm so glad that we unpacked a lot of things. We discussed a lot of things. And I'm so glad that you all were receptive to me sharing. I wasn't uncomfortable at all. That's another sign of you forgiving yourself. When you share your transparent experiences, when you get to the point where you don't feel uncomfortable sharing, you forgiving yourself. You forgiving others. When you're able to share the experiences that you had. So if you're not there yet, you're still struggling and you still have some work that you have to do. But any closing remarks before I close out, Ms. Michelle?
I wanted to encourage people and that you can't get it wrong. You can only get it right as long as you're moving forward. All of us have a journey. All of us have some issues, and they're all contributing to this beautiful tapestry that we are. Like, so, you know, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you better. But even in that, like I was saying, I am very grateful for the things that didn't go well in my life, and God knows it took a long time to say that, because it's the root of my wisdom.
That's so good. And
we all are gonna, if you seek wisdom, you get it, but it's built on something. Wisdom doesn't come from living a life of roses and daffodils and everything's great. Wisdom comes from overcoming experience and learning how to use those muscles to make good choices and to be able to share and articulate like we're sharing right now. So grace is an amazing gift, and wisdom is the benefit of doing the work, and that's so worth it.
That's good. That's good. I don't even know if I want to go after that. Matter of fact, I'm just going to conclude by saying, yeah, you're going to do the clap on me. No, honestly, like, loving yourself is a process, because the stories that we've told ourselves up until this point have been falling short of loving ourselves. So once you get to the point where you realize how ridiculous your stories about yourself that were negative were, I really want you to start intentionally speaking to yourself in the manner that you would speak to a person that you'd be concerned about their feelings. And what I mean by that is a person that you're concerned about their feelings, you typically wouldn't say harsh things or negative things to them. So I'm going to need you to treat yourself in the same manner. Literally date yourself. You wouldn't say bad things or evil things to a person that you're dating. So when you catch yourself saying, I'm stupid, or this is ridiculous, or I'm fat, Michelle, these are things that you would not say to a person that you care about how they feel. So I'm not saying not to be honest with yourself. But I'm saying be conscious of how you speak to yourself, because what you say to yourself is what's creating the stories, which in turn are contributing to your beliefs.
Stop the cycle. Do not do that to yourself that other people have already done.
Yeah, causing you to walk out your walk the way that you're doing. So as usual, I appreciate your minds and time. I truly, truly appreciate your minds and time. You don't have to sit here and listen. You don't have to participate. You don't even have to just watch, but you all do. And because of that, I will continue to study, pray, and do the necessary research to make sure that what I'm sharing with you all is not hurting you. It's only helping you and healing you, and coming from a loving place. With that being said, I am your host, Edward L. Fairley of No Love Incorporated, and we wish you well, and we'll talk to y'all next week. God bless. Peace.